While many can forgive offense, no one ever forgives contempt. Benjamin Franklin. It was a beautiful winter day in Austin, Texas. The temperature was 67 degrees and a light westerly breeze was blowing. The evening looked even more spectacular. Full moon, temperature around 50 degrees at 8 p.m. Perfect forecast. To top it off, the Moody Center was hosting a Florida-Georgia line concert, and Henry Can, pronounced Hurricane, had 2 front-row tickets to the show for him and his wife Melanie. The 33-year-old couple, married for nearly 5 years, were expected to celebrate Valentine's Day a week early. The only problem was that it wasn't hot at all in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. In fact, it was about 10 degrees F. There was a foot of snow on the ground, and it was predicted to be another 10 inches before the snow melted. What does this have to do with Henry, Melanie, and a date with Tyler Hubbard, Brian Kelly, and the rest of the FGL band? Good question. The day before, Henry had been called to Sioux Falls at the last minute to deal with a serious computer problem at Sanford Health Biomedical Center. Their neonatal unit was participating in a nationwide research project when the glitch occurred. Henry was the top IT specialist in his company and was rarely called away on business trips. But Sanford was their 3rd largest client, so Henry boarded the first available Delta flight, leaving the airport on Thursday. It took him about 6 hours to get everything sorted out. He booked a 6 a.m. flight to Austin, which would allow him to get home 10 hours before the concert. The only problem was that by 3 a.m., there was already a foot layer of snow on the ground, and it was still falling. The Delta app on his phone popped up notifications of delays and then flight cancellations. Henry stayed awake, looking for options. Henry was well paid for his work and worth every penny, but his boss would be furious if he took a charter flight home. However, he had just saved his company several $1,000s more than a charter would have cost, so he tried to take advantage of that option. By 5 a.m., it was clear that no one would be flying anytime soon. The snowfall was to continue all day, and the temperature would drop to freezing. Some were calling it the storm of the decade. Henry could think of only one thing. Shit. Around 9 in the morning, he dialed extension 2 to call Melanie's office. Her assistant Kim answered on the second ring and put him through. Hey babe, I'm so excited about tonight. What time will you be home? Mel, have you seen the weather in Sioux Falls? No, Henry, I knew that's where you were headed, but I wasn't paying attention. What's going on? Unfortunately, a whole bunch of goddamn snow. 12 inches so far, and probably another 10 today before the snow ends. All flights have been canceled. Oh, baby, I'm so sorry. I was so excited about tonight. I know I've been working a lot lately, and this was the perfect chance to start a romantic weekend together. Damn, sometimes I hate your job. I'm upset too, Mel. But you know I only travel 4 or 5 times a year, and only when absolutely necessary. It was a big crisis with a major client. Like you said, we haven't been together much these past few months, but you're the one spending crazy hours, not me. If anything, my job allows us to have a damn good Texas lifestyle. You're right, Henry. It's just that lately we've been apart more often than we've been together. I know it's my fault too. I'm working hard to make partner, which means I have to make time for it. You're at the point where you can dictate most of your schedule and keep it close to normal. I'm getting to that point, but it will be another year or so before I start controlling my hours. I miss you, and I miss us. Me too, babe. Why don't you take your girlfriend Sue and go have some fun? The tickets are front row and trying to sell them is too much trouble. I can order a car to pick you up and bring you home. Don't let me spoil the fun of a great show. Melanie hesitated and talked about just selling the tickets. She would just stay home and watch the concert online. She could log into their Ticketmaster account and sell seats with no problem. She continued to talk about how she didn't want to go if he wasn't with her. Henry persisted in urging her to go and have fun. He reminded her that she had a new pair of Tacovas, and those stylish shoes looked good on her. After a few minutes, she agreed. They both said, "I love you," and hung up. 5 minutes later, Melanie found a phone in the back compartment of her large bag and dialed the first number. This was her part of the conversation. Hey, how was your day? Well, I might have something to cheer you up. Henry just called. He's stuck in Sioux Falls, in South Dakota. Yeah, he had to rush down there on business, and there was a big snowstorm. Can you imagine his bad luck? Yeah, and you were lucky. Anyway, I still have 2 tickets on the Florida-Georgia line tonight, but hubby will be cooling his heels in the Great White North. Diane is still visiting her relatives in Memphis? That's great. How about we spend the evening together? I have a new denim skirt and boots I've been wanting to try out for a while. I'll come over to your Uber and we'll see. How does that sound? Yeah, I'll order an Uber Black so we can have tinted windows. I giggle. Yeah, let's plan a late-night party after the concert. I'll see you around 7. I can't wait. Melanie worked hard and made it through lunch so she could leave the firm by 4:30 p.m. She wanted to soak in the tub and relax for an hour before heading to the concert. Before leaving the office, she called her best friend, Susan O'Connor. They had met during her first year at the firm and had hit it off immediately. Only 1 year apart in age and married only 2 weeks apart that same year, they had a lot in common. Hey, Susie Q, need a favor, babe. What's up, Mel? Glad to help if I can. If Henry ever asks you how our night at the Florida-Georgia line concert tonight went, your answer will be awesome. What the hell, Mel? Are you still having fun with David the asshole? Mel giggled. Yeah, I just can't get away from him. I know his partners call him that because he can be an asshole, but let me tell you, that nickname has another good reason, girl. Sue was not amused by this. Mel, Henry is a wonderful man, and you two together make a wonderful couple. This is the moment when you start thinking about kids and raising a family together. You're not in college anymore, sis. Why are you spreading your legs for this player? You're jeopardizing everything for fun. Mel sighed. Her friend was loyal, but also held more conservative views on fidelity. I know, Sue. Henry is a great guy, and I never plan on losing him. David is wild and fun. We're both happily married, but we just have a spark that rocks our worlds. Mel, you really need to think a little deeper before you open your mouth. If you were happily married, you wouldn't be slutting around with your boss on this side. Nor would he be entertaining one of his female employees if he was happy. What part of the marriage vows did you not understand? Renouncing all the others is pretty easy. Mel was beginning to tire of her friend's lectures. Sue, will you cover for me or not if Henry ever asks? I won't offer any information or ever bring it up, but if he asks me, I'll tell him I was with you. Where are we sitting? Front row, right in the center. Thank you, Susie Q. You're the best. Next weekend we're spending the day at the spa. I'd love that. So Henry bought great tickets, and now you're going to use his gift to cheat on him with David, Sue thought to herself. Out of her mouth came, okay, bye. Mel hurried home and began to get ready for her date. She had a couple of glasses of her favorite Pinot Grigio, shaved her legs in a bubble bath, and then got dressed. She was wearing a white lace bra so she could undo a couple of the top buttons on her white blouse. Her skirt was pulled up about 6 inches above her knees, showing off her strong legs. The boots were dark gray and matched the vest. They had been a Christmas present from Henry. It was the first time she'd worn them, but she was so excited that the irony didn't catch on. She looked in the mirror and was pleased with what she saw. She figured she'd crush a few people this evening, but she was only interested in one. She had another glass of wine, after which she ordered an Uber. When it pulled up, she asked for one stop on her way to the concert. The driver happily agreed. More money in his pocket was fine with him. The car pulled up to a gated apartment complex. Melanie gave him the code to enter. They drove 2 blocks and pulled over to the curb. Just then, David Miller, Melanie's boss, jumped out of his condominium and jumped into the back seat, greeting his companion with an enthusiastic and passionate kiss. Good God, you smell and look beautiful, Mel. I think we should skip the concert and head straight to your house. Melanie welcomed his kiss, opening her mouth and accepting it with a purr. Calm down, big boy. There will still be time for that. It's going to be a great show. The Uber driver remained silent, but noticed the wedding ring and diamond on her left hand as she kissed and caressed her lover. Whore and bastard, he muttered to himself. For her part, Mel had never intended to cheat on her husband. They had met on a blind date arranged by her best friend. Sympathy had quickly developed between them. She was outgoing, friendly, and socializing with friends came easily to her. Henry was a little more reserved, but there was an inner strength about him that appealed to her. She never felt like he overshadowed her, but his presence always made her feel safe. He was kind but firm, with a warm personality and wise beyond his years. He attended college on an ROTC scholarship, and after college he served in the Marine Corps for 5 years. This experience combined with his character made him a man who could always be counted on. This character trait was as good for Mel as his rough 190-pound appearance. Henry was skeptical of Mel's affection from the beginning. He had never considered himself a great catcher or anyone special. The Corps had taught him that his duty was to serve those around him. "You go first and fall back last," they drummed into him at OCS. This code made an impression on him that stayed with him even after he returned to civilian life. So being pursued by a beautiful woman made him slightly embarrassed. As they grew up with Mel, Henry's fears subsided, and Mel's confidence in them grew. They married after an 18-month courtship that included a 4-month engagement. Thanks to his time in the communications department and his natural ability, Henry landed a great job at his current firm in Austin. In his 3rd year with the company, he became head of his own department. In his 5th year, he became vice president of information technology development and client support. Mel graduated from law school 9 months after their marriage and landed a solid entry-level position at a mid-sized firm in Austin, specializing in oil and mineral rights. She was smart as a whip and won the attention of the firm's 3 partners, Connor, Sims, and Miller. And that's where the trouble began. David Miller was a 43-year-old married man with 2 teenage children. His wife, Diane, worked as a principal at a local high school. Mel liked her and had always thought they were well suited to each other as a married couple. Much about her boss remained a mystery to her. What was clear, however, was that David Miller was a tough bastard to work for. As senior partner, he worked at least 55 hours a week, while his 2 colleagues worked barely more than 40. He expected his team to work somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 hours a week. Mel was in her 3rd year with the firm and had finally gotten down to an acceptable 65 hours a week. Asshole seemed to be pleased with her work and gave her better assignments. They started spending more time together during the day and after work, more time with the team, and more time alone together. Soon, the time spent alone began to far exceed the time spent with the team. They started talking about more intimate topics and even touching each other occasionally. They were playing with fire. Both knew it. 6 months ago, the sparks erupted into a bright flame. They won a grand judgment that would bring the practice about $2 million. David's share would be about $400,000, and Mel would receive a $45,000 bonus. The team of 6 gathered in David's office for a late afternoon celebration. The asshole was in such good spirits that he even opened a bottle of his 4 Roses, single-barrel bourbon for the occasion. After an hour, the party began to disintegrate. David asked Mel to wait a bit. This elicited a couple of smirks from the more observant people in the crowd. David escorted the last person out and quietly closed the door. He turned around when Mel, leaning against his desk, was already undoing her buttons. David paced the floor like a man possessed. David wasn't as big and strong as Henry, but he was more commanding. He was the kind of man who knew what he wanted and went after it. He'd wanted Mel since he'd first gotten to know her intimately about 2 years ago, and now it was working out for them. "No, David, I don't think this is a one-time thing. I feel a connection with you that I don't want to resist. We're both married, and we want to stay that way. But I hope you and I will have moments like this day every now and then." "It makes me happy to hear you say that, Mel. Yes, we both want to stay married, but I also want us to have more moments like this one." That was 6 months ago, and now Mel and David were walking hand in hand into the concert arena. They hid their infidelities well, but were still diligent about seeing each other at least twice a month. Tonight, if they were worried about being seen, they didn't show it in any way. They weren't overly affectionate, but even a casual observer could tell this was a date between two people who were drawn to each other. Back in Sioux Falls, a frustrated Henry decided to broadcast the concert live. If I can't be with her, maybe I can see her when they pan the crowd, he thought to himself. After warming up, the band FGL took the stage, playing 4 fast and loud songs. The camera didn't look at the audience too much until the 5th song, which finally went slow. Cruz's love song was performed when the cameras started filming couples in the audience. Henry almost went to the bathroom when the song started, but remembered it was Mel's favorite song and stayed. 30 seconds later, his world crumbled and his marriage fell apart. The camera stopped on a couple in the front row, right where Henry had bought his tickets. The man and woman were hugging, slow dancing, and kissing deeply, clearly oblivious to the fact that they were being shown on the big screen. In the new boots Henry had given her for Christmas, Mel was unrecognizable, and although he didn't know him well, there was no doubt that this was David Miller, embracing and passionately kissing his wife. Henry sank to the floor, at a loss for words. The agony of betrayal came over him like a punch to the gut. He was dazed, dizzy, and struggling to breathe. The camera moved to the other 3 couples, but then back to Mel and David again. This time, Mel broke the kiss, looked up and saw them on the screen. The look of panic on her face was impossible to hide. She buried her face in David's chest, pulling his head against her so he wouldn't look up. For 15 minutes, Henry sat on the floor, tears streaming from his eyes. He alternately asked himself questions like, "Why Mel?" and snapped into anger. "Screw you, Mel, and I'm definitely going with you, David Miller." As he began to come to his senses, he realized he had to act, and act fast. The Corps had taught him that if you sit still and do nothing, you can die. If you move and give the enemy a fight, you have a chance. He sprang into action. Henry called his good friend and attorney, Michael Lipscomb. Michael was a little surprised to get the call at 9:30 on a Friday night, but even more surprised to hear the subject of the conversation. He told Henry he was sorry and pressed him a couple times, asking if Henry was sure it was Mel. Once he was sure, he told Henry to hang up, but to answer the call that would come in within the next 5 minutes. 3 minutes later, the phone rang. He didn't recognize the number, but it was Austin's area code, 512. "Hello, this is Henry Kahn." "Hello, Mr. Kane, this is Erica Hamilton, an attorney and good friend of Michael's." "Hello, Mrs. Hamilton. Thank you for calling me." "Call me Erica and I'll call you Henry," Erica replied. Henry was about to say something, but she continued. "I apologize for being so short with you, Henry, but time is of the essence. Your wife is at the concert with another man, and you witnessed their intimacy on the live broadcast. Is that correct?" "Yes." "Okay. Where were they sitting and what were they wearing as far as you can tell?" Henry answered as quickly and succinctly as possible. "When we hang up, send me the latest and greatest picture of your wife. I have a private detective on his way to the concert right now. He'll be there in 10 minutes, and he's going to follow them all night, and if need be, all weekend. We need to gather as much evidence as possible, as quickly as possible." "Okay, thanks." "Henry, can you come up with an excuse to stay in Sioux Falls a couple more days? I want our evidence to be irrefutable, and one night at the concert won't be enough for us. If you can stay in the snow or do some other work for your client, we'll have a better chance of catching him with his pants down. Please pardon my candor." "Yes, I can arrange that," replied Henry. "Good, Henry. Send me the picture as soon as possible and sit tight. I'll call you back no later than noon tomorrow and give you the latest news. Call your wife in the morning at a reasonable time and let her know you will be delayed until at least Monday evening. I assume your employer won't mind." "Yes, I'm a senior vice president, so I have a flexible schedule. I have some more work to do with a client on Monday." "Great, I'm sorry, I have to run. We'll talk tomorrow." Henry was grateful for the conversation and quick action. He was still dizzy and had no idea how it would end, but this woman was clearly good. He got very little sleep that night, and by the way, he never listened to FGL again. By 5:30 in the morning, Henry had given up trying to sleep. He got up and looked outside. The snow had gotten fainter, but was still falling. He turned on the local radio station. A total of 22 inches had fallen in the last 36 hours. A record high for Sioux Falls. Obviously, nothing much would happen for the rest of the day, or even the next day. Henry started taking notes. He didn't like to cheat. Whether it was the first or the 100th time, it didn't matter. Trust broken between loved ones was something he wouldn't tolerate. And if cheating wasn't bad enough, the contempt they both showed him was simply prohibitive. They slow danced and kissed in a very public place in his town. Even if they were only seen by one or two acquaintances, word of mouth would spread. Did you hear that Melanie Canna is getting her husband drunk with her boss? There was no way he'd put up with that shit. He analyzed his actions as her husband over the past 5 years. He'd always been faithful, but not because women were busting down his door. He rarely looked at another woman. He was head over heels in love with Mel, and that meant he was completely faithful to her. They fought from time to time, but he was a good husband to her. Caring, friendly, protective, but always respecting her as an equal partner. No, he didn't deserve such neglect. He made a spreadsheet of assets and liabilities. Made a very short list of people to call, including his boss, his father, and 2 buddies from the Corps. He made a list of next steps after talking to Erica. It was only 7 in the morning, so he put on his sweatpants and headed to the hotel fitness room, where he worked out hard until 9. After showering and eating breakfast, he picked up his phone. There were 2 messages from Mel, wondering how he was doing and telling him how much she missed him. She mentioned that the concert had gone well. Sue had joined her. Disrespect again. He decided to check something out. Perhaps he should have waited to consult with his attorney, but after all, he was a Marine. Inaction in the face of a crisis didn't seem like a good option. The phone rang twice before it was answered. "Hi, Henry," Sue said. "I heard you were stuck in Sioux Falls. I saw the weather map. It looks terrible." "Hi, Sue. Yeah, it's just a whiteout here. Texas hasn't had this much snow in ages, not to mention it's only been snowing for 1 day. I'll be glad to get home." "What can I do for you, Henry?" Sue's voice sounded nervous. "Look, Sue, I was just wondering. How did you like the concert last night? I thought the opening song of the concert, 'This Is How We Roll,' was great. I watched it live from my hotel room." "Yes, Henry. It was a great show. I know Mel had fun, but I really missed you." "Thanks for saying that, Sue. Can I ask you one more question before I let you go?" "Sure." "I know you're a big FGL fan, so I'm wondering how the hell you could confuse 'This Is How We Roll' with 'Up Down,' which they opened last night with. How is that possible, Sue?" There was silence on the other end of the line, so Henry continued. "Sue, I know you're a friend of Mel's, but I also considered you a friend of Jim's. But now it seems you've picked a side and are willing to set aside our friendship so she can entertain her boss. I don't know what I did to deserve such disrespect for you and Jim, but your betrayal hurts me deeply." A huge lump rose in Sue's throat, and tears came to her eyes. It came to her that she had made the wrong choice in covering for Mel. No friend would ever ask a loved one to help them be dishonest and hurt others. "I'm sorry, Henry," she replied in almost a whisper. "How long has this been going on, Sue? How long has David Miller been entertaining my wife?" "About 6 months, Henry." Henry had been preparing himself for something like this, but hearing it for the first time, he was shocked. He had to fight to keep his composure. "Sue, does Jim know that you're lying for Mel and helping her betray her wedding vows to cheat on me?" Sue sighed. "Oh no, Henry. Jim doesn't know anything about that. He would be mortified and ashamed to know my part." "Okay, Sue. For now, I won't tell Jim about the part you played. It will all come out soon, and I'm sure he'll have questions that you'll have to answer. Jim is a good man, so my advice to you is to come clean when the time comes. In the meantime, if I hear you say a word about this conversation to Mel, I'll call Jim myself and make sure he explains unequivocally what part you played in helping Mel despise me and ruin our marriage." Sue was crying now. "No, Henry, I won't say anything to Mel. I won't even answer text or phone calls over the weekend. I will find a way to avoid talking to her. I'm really, really sorry and ashamed, Henry." Henry disconnected without saying goodbye. On the other end of the conversation, Sue began to realize the depth of her stupidity done in the name of friendship. She realized that sooner or later she would have to talk to Jim. It would probably be for the best. Henry called Mel on the phone. Her voice was sleepy, but she played the role of loving wife perfectly. She pouted heavily when she learned that he wouldn't be home until Monday evening at the earliest. She and Sue had had fun, but it wasn't the same without him. She had few plans for the day: run a few errands, do some chores around the house. Nothing major, really. She promised she'd save the special stuff until hubby got home. She ended the conversation with a resigned, "I love you." Henry replied, "Goodbye." That struck her as odd, but she didn't give it a second thought. At 11:58, Henry's cell phone rang. It was Erica. She gave a brief update and then said she would call back around 7 p.m. with a detailed report. She called at exactly 7 p.m. The summary of the case was as follows. 1. The private investigator was very, very good. He infiltrated the concert and took more pictures. Mel was scared of the cameras for a while, but by the end of the concert, they were hugging and kissing again. 2. They went back to Henry and Mel's house. The EP had anticipated this and had an assistant set up recording equipment in several rooms. They spent the night in the master bedroom, engaging in a very vivid relationship. 3. Later in the kitchen, they engaged in a casual but frank conversation about their relationship from its inception. They freely mentioned a few escapades within the walls of the law office. They also discussed how to keep things private. 4. They went out to lunch and then returned to Can's bedroom for the afternoon and evening. 5. The private investigator would continue his surveillance and notes, but Erica assumed things would be the same. Next, she wanted to know what was on Henry's mind. He had been pondering and taking notes all day. He outlined his reflections to his lawyer. "She has despised me publicly and privately for 6 months. The marriage is over," he began. "She should feel the humiliation she has heaped on me along with her friends and family. The truth of her actions must be made public. There is no reason to amplify or exaggerate. The facts speak for themselves, but no nonsense about irreconcilable differences. I want her sent to work as soon as possible. I want his wife to know when I'm servicing Mel. The same goes for David. I want his wife to have everything we have on him. I hope and pray that she brings him out in the divorce. I also hope his partners turn out to have more morals than he does and get him to leave the practice. Maybe if we threaten to sue the firm, since they've been doing this repeatedly in the office, we can encourage them to do it. I don't want to stay in this house. I need to sell it. There are too many memories. Honestly, I don't even know if I'll stay in Texas. However, I don't want her to stay in it either. Hopefully we can split 50/50ths on the sale. I also want to protect all my assets as a spewer. I don't mind using my money to pay off cars or other small debts, but I sure as hell don't want her getting child support from me. She just got a big bonus and she's already getting a small 6-figure sum." Erica asked a few clarifying questions. She told Henry that, given his ability to make good money, it was likely that she would receive alimony. However, if the law firm had a morals clause, they could clearly show that her infidelity had ruined the marriage. That might help. Henry would stay in Sioux Falls or Austin until Tuesday afternoon. Chalk would be served mid-afternoon. Before then, Erica would try to track down Mrs. Miller and see if she wanted to join in the fun. Henry noticed that Mel didn't call him again on Saturday or until early Sunday evening. She and the asshole must have been having a great time. He knew he had to call her, or she might suspect something. He called around 9. Hey, I was just thinking about you and realized we haven't talked since yesterday. I hope you're still going home tomorrow. I can't wait to get to you. I've missed you so much. I'm sorry, Mel, but that will be on Tuesday. I have a flight through O'Hare that will get me home around 3 p.m., so we can plan to have dinner together. Okay, she replied, disappointed. But next time I meet with James, CEO and Henry's boss, I'm going to tell him no more winter trips. He ruined a great weekend we were supposed to be enjoying together. You'll tell him when you want to see him again, Henry said, almost chuckling at the thought. Inwardly, though, he thought, what a goddamn cold-blooded evil bitch you've become, Mel. They talked for another minute or two, and, before hanging up, Mel said, Henry, I love you so much. You know that, don't you? You know how much I love you. Yes, Mel, Henry replied, holding back new tears. I know exactly how much you love me. And hung up the phone. He just couldn't let her humiliate herself. Even if he gave her a clue, he knew what was happening to her. She'll never humiliate me again, he thought, as he dialed his boss James's number to keep him in the loop. Henry sat at the kitchen table on Tuesday at 3 o'clock sharp. He wasn't sure when Mel would be home. From Erica, he knew things were moving along. She was supposed to arrive sometime between 2 and 4. Apparently, Mrs. Miller had already forgiven the asshole for 2 previous affairs with women like Mel. She wasn't in the mood for a third, and was happy to hire Erica to represent her interests as well. Both Henry Cann and Diane Miller were named as plaintiffs in a civil suit against Connor, Sims, and Miller. Erica reminded both of them that she didn't think it would come to anything, but rumor had it that while Connor and Sims weren't necessarily choir boys, they weren't the type to put up with a lack of morals that hurt their practice. Perhaps this jerk would be shown the door. At 3:15 p.m., Erica called to let Henry know the deed was done. While they briefly discussed next steps, Henry's phone was bursting with messages and calls from Mel. In order, the messages read, What the hell? How dare you humiliate me in my workplace? Answer me, asshole. You better be home when I get home. I'll never forgive you for this. Henry had only seen combat twice. His job in the communications office was a combat support role. But every Marine is trained to be a gunner, and twice in Iraq, he was caught in firefights. Neither of them lasted long, and his captain, who never praised anyone, took the young first lieutenant aside and told him he did a great job for a rookie. Henry's combat experience kept him calm and determined about the fight that was about to break out in his kitchen. Henry, where the hell are you? Yelled Mel, coming in the side door from the side of the driveway. Henry sat silently at the table. Mel appeared from around the corner with a folder in hand and threw it forcefully on the desk. You bastard! You handed me divorce papers at work? How could you do that? How could you be so cruel? Do you realize how humiliating that was? Then her tone softened a little. Why, Henry? Why did you file for divorce? We love each other. We have a wonderful marriage and a glorious future. What are you thinking? Talk to me. Henry kept his composure. He realized that he was seeing Mel for the first time since the horrible revelation last Friday. Her eyes looked sunken and puffy. She was nervous. He noticed that she had opened the divorce petition, but didn't seem to have looked through it. Sit down, Mel, and we'll talk this over. Don't tell me to sit down, you bastard! Who do you think you are? What are you, entertaining some whore on the side? I swear I'll cut your balls off if you are. She hovered over him. That's enough, Henry thought. He stood up and towered over her. Looking down with a calm but grim expression, he said again in a voice that demanded attention. Sit down, Mel. Now. She sat down. Mel, have you even looked at the file attached to the divorce petition? She shook her head from side to side, but didn't reach for the file. Let's look at what caused my world to come crashing down around me last Friday night. First off, here's a picture of you and David the asshole at the concert. No, not with Sue, as you lied to me, but with your boss. That's a lover's embrace and a kiss the two of you are enjoying. Mel jerked away from the table, as if the photograph was a snake preparing to strike. David, it's not. Quiet, Mel. This is my time to talk. You'll get your chance. The next item is a flash drive. I'm not going to put it in and play it. You can do that on your laptop later. But it is a recording of you and asshole doing it in our bed last Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday night, and Sunday morning. The tape also includes the conversations you had right here at this table in our house, discussing past adventures and how to keep me and Mrs. Diane Miller in the dark for the future. By the way, I know your office isn't exactly next door to the asshole's office, so you may not have noticed that Mrs. Miller served him with divorce papers today. I don't know how he'll explain to his kids that this is the third time he's been caught with an employee, but that's not my problem. You knew you were number 3, right? Melanie flinched at this revelation. Apparently, she thought she was special, the only one he'd been with out of wedlock. Apparently, the prick was also a great liar, but then again, he was a lawyer. What did she expect? Okay, anyway, there are a few more pages here describing your betrayals as far back as Sue could remember. Apparently, she realized that covering your ass would cost her marriage to Jim, so she turned to state's evidence, using legal terms. Another way to put it is that she threw you under the bus and told you everything. All the nights she lied and said you were with her. Even the maiden weekend last November was a ruse to get you and your asshole to sneak off to South Padre. By the way, I wouldn't call Sue anytime soon. Jim has made it clear that the marriage is over if she speaks to you outside of his presence. Finally, you have a copy of the civil suit that Diane Miller and I are filing against your law firm. Doing it in our marital bed does not violate any company policy. However, his desk, couch, and private bathroom are all part of the law firm, so that's where we may have a case. Our attorney thinks we have a fighting chance. So, my dear whore wife, this is why I'm divorcing you. You have broken my heart in a way that I can hardly ever put into words. I was so upset last week when I had to fly to Sioux Falls because I couldn't wait to spend time with the only woman I've ever loved. The only woman I ever wanted to love. My wife, the person I hoped would be the mother of our children. Then, as I sat watching the concert live, hoping to see my little girl singing and dancing, doing her best to keep us apart from her faithful friend Sue, I nearly died when I saw her in the arms of another man, lusting after him, welcoming his kisses and caresses. My soul was shattered in an instant. I guess I'm a big enough person to take offense to Mel, even a serious offense. People aren't perfect. I'm not perfect. Forgiveness should always be part of a marriage. But you didn't hurt me, you treated me with contempt. You deliberately humiliated me in public. I can't. I won't tolerate that. I won't be married to you, Mel, not 1 minute longer than it takes to get a divorce. I'm not going to make life easy for you. I'm going to keep as much of my money as I can. Your family and friends will know what you've done. I'm not going to hide the truth from them for the sake of someone who spit in my face with her actions. You're on your own now. I guess that's what you wanted all along. That's it. I'm done. Speak softly if you want. Mel tried not to cry, but she wasn't too successful. She was a strong and proud woman, but this man she claimed to love, whom she had betrayed so deeply, had simply destroyed her by telling her the truth. He had felt the depth of her terrible actions and their consequences. She wanted to hate him, to blame him. She tried desperately to avoid making such an obvious mistake, but there was no escaping the truth of who she was. Have you told my parents? No, I'll leave that up to you. I talked to mine, my boss, and a couple buddies I served with. Other than my lawyer and our company attorney Michael, I haven't talked to anyone. But I'll be blunt. If you try to hide the truth or whitewash your actions, I'll give them everything, including what's on the flash drive. I can't tell my parents everything. They would die hearing all of this. You can't hate me that much, Henry. Mel, you didn't care one bit about my feelings, or the fact that your choices killed my heart. You've been acting hateful to me for at least 6 months, and that's assuming you didn't have any other lovers before that. Don't pretend to be a victim. I'm giving you a week to share with them, and then I'm calling. They better have a firm idea of what happened, or they'll get a copy of everything. Henry, I swear there were no others. David was the first and only one. Sure, Mel, And you and Sue were together at the concert last Friday. You and the asshole didn't have fun in our marital bed all weekend while you were telling me how much you loved me. I assume that every time you open your mouth, you are lying. I doubt you even know how to tell the truth. Henry, I didn't mean for this to happen. I wasn't looking for it. I was seized by the moment we won the Dutton case. Once we started, I wanted to stop it, but I just couldn't. I don't know why. Really, Mel? You don't know why? Henry flipped through the folder until he found the right page. I'm sorry. I should have realized from your conversations how much you wanted to be faithful to me. Like, for example, that quote from 2 months ago when you were both lying in our marital bed. David, I just can't get enough of you. We have to be so careful. If Diane or Henry finds out about this, we'll have to quit. And I don't want to ever stop making love to you. Yes, Mel. You seem to be so inconsistent in your behavior. You're completely misguided, Mel. Henry's words began to reach consciousness. Mel sank down in her chair and was silent for a while. Finally, she spoke. I have no excuses, Henry. I'm a grown woman, and I made my choice. I thought I could hide it from you. I thought I could play this game, and if you didn't find out, it would be harmless. I knew David was just an affair. I knew we would never love each other, even if I said those words. I never had feelings for him the way I have for you. But I shamelessly betrayed you and your love for me. Mel paused for a moment to blow her nose and dab her eyes. She looked across the table at Henry and immediately noticed two things. His wedding ring was lying on the table, and the look in his eyes told her that he had lost all hope of redemption for her. He treated her with the same contempt she treated him with. Her safe little world of a loving husband was gone. Henry, I don't know what to do or where to go. I can't leave the house before the divorce. It would mean admitting it's over and financial suicide. I don't suppose you're leaving either. Why don't we agree to stay here for a while? I need time to think and decide how to proceed. I can't promise I won't fight for a divorce. Right now, all I want is to be with you forever. I can't imagine life without you. I will stay in one of the spare rooms and avoid contact other than what is necessary between roommates. I will respect your space. Mel, I can't tell you what to do, what to think, or where to go. Erica, my attorney, told me not to leave the house until the divorce is official, and she told me you'll feel the same way. You're staying in the master bedroom tonight. I refuse to sleep on the mattress you and that asshole were on. Tomorrow, I'll take it to the Salvation Army, and they'll bring me a new one. This will be my bed that you will never sleep on. Thank you for understanding, Henry. I'll fight to stay if I have to. It's my only choice under the law, but I appreciate you going out of your way to help me. I'll start moving my stuff tomorrow while you're at work. Mel stood up and tried to hug Henry. He quickly pulled away from her. Screw you, Mel. Don't ever try to touch me again. It's all I can do to be in the same room with you and stay calm. You destroyed my heart. You destroyed us. You will not have my comfort now or ever again for doing such a disgusting thing. You made your choice alone. You have to live alone. I can never completely forget your debauchery, Mel, but I will try my best to get you as far out of my life as possible, and that journey has already begun. Mel collapsed back into her chair, laid her head on the table, and sobbed. Epilogue. Mel fought the divorce to the last. In silence, she hoped Henry would relent and stay. She also had to fight if she wanted to keep any shred of self-respect. Many friends broke off relationships with her after learning what she had done to Henry. Mel asked the court to order counseling, proving that she was already in therapy, that she had nothing to do with David Miller, etc. However, representing herself in court is not a good idea, but Mel was worried about paying for an attorney, so she decided to give it a try. It slowed down the process for a while, but she never derailed it. Even Mel's parents begged her to let Henry go. They were outraged by her actions and sided with Henry, even trying to maintain a tenuous relationship with their daughter. It took 7 months, but the divorce was granted. The house and savings were split 50-50ths, but David didn't have to pay alimony. Miracles happen. Melanie left Connor, Sims, and Miller and went to work for a small firm in San Antonio. On the day of her departure, she was walking out the front door and turned to say goodbye to Henry. He closed the door in her face before she could speak. She rarely went on dates now, but on Friday nights she usually went home with a random guy just to have fun. Perhaps human companionship soothes her soul. Perhaps it reminds her of being a whore who abandoned a good man in a marriage. Turns out Connor and Sims do have souls, even if they are lawyers. They forced Miller out, and he moved to Houston a few months later, taking a job at a small law firm run by his cousin. Diane had ripped him off in the divorce, and the kids wouldn't speak to him. Henry and Diane's lawsuit was settled out of court for $250,000 for each of the plaintiffs. Erica was very happy with the outcome. David Miller began spending his evenings at the Oilers, a rundown bar in a bad part of town. One evening as he was leaving, a man approached him in the parking lot. He looked into Henry Canna's eyes. There were no security cameras in the neighborhood. Henry said, "Hey, asshole!" and then gave him a crushing blow with his fist to the man's face. "I wanted you to know who did this to you, David. I wanted you to look me in the eye and realize that it happened. If you report it, there are 12 retired Marines sitting in a bar in downtown Austin right now, most of them in combat vests, and they'll swear I was with them all evening. If by some chance I get arrested and charged with assaulting you, one or two of them will come back and finish what I started. You piece of shit." Charges were never filed. About a year after the divorce, Henry was walking out of a coffee shop in downtown Austin and looked up to see a beautiful woman about his age walking toward him. He held the door for her as she entered. "Thank you, kind sir," she said. "It's nice to see that cowboys still have manners." "You're welcome, Mom," Henry replied, and headed for his car. He was about to get into the car when he suddenly thought, "What the hell?" and turned around, walking back into the house. She was sitting facing the door and immediately looked up when he returned. He walked over to her table, held out his hand, and said, "I'm sorry, but I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Henry." She took his hand in greeting. "Nice to meet you, Henry. I'm Lori. Why don't you take a chair?" "Yes, this is Lori." The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.